Hello and welcome to another Grow Together Food and Medicinal Gardens episode. Although perhaps I need to drop the food aspect from the title because, well, having a bit of a dilemma actually. I've gone off vegetables. I'll tell you why in just a moment. So I've gone off vegetables not because I had an absolutely disastrous year growing on the allotment. It's the worst vegetable harvest I've ever had in my life. No, that's not it. Failure is something that makes me even more determined to do it right the next year. But what's really changed things is, many of you may know from previous videos, I did the 10-day master cleanse that Nate from Garden Like a Viking introduced me to. And on that cleanse, towards the end, I was researching various dietary stuff and came across an ancestral diet, PKD. And during the course of my research, they introduced me to an incredible woman called Sally Kay Norton, and they recommended one reads her book. So I did. And it's all about plant toxins, specifically oxalates, which I had heard of in regards to things like spinach and rhubarb. I knew they could cause kidney stones, and I knew they were foods you shouldn't eat a lot of. That was the sum total of my knowledge. But this book was, well, I read it over the bank holiday weekend, and as you see, it's quite sizable. Now, I turned over a few of the pages that I thought were relevant, and in the end, it's like the whole book is, I've turned over nearly every page as pertinent. And I've always known that plants do produce toxins to stop themselves being eaten, but I always considered it to be, well, you know, look at the size of an insect that's trying to eat that plant compared to us, and we've obviously evolved to eat plants and vegetables over the millennia. But I'd really never properly considered plant toxins to the degree that they could be an issue that I did doing the Big Fat Challenge and then reading Sally's book. So in this, she gives a couple examples that people have been on retreats where they've done, say, a 10-day of juice and smoothies with spinach in, and they've ended up on kidney dialysis. That's how awful oxalates can be. So to help you visualise, under a microscope, that's what they look like going into your bloodstream. And yes, they can get mopped up in the kidneys and they can all bind together with calcium and form kidney stones, but they can end up in a lot of places and do a lot of cellular damage to you, especially if you've got leaky gut. Thankfully, there are quite a lot of vegetables that are low oxalate, unfortunately, none of which I'm growing in my allotment. Things that were my staple favourites, like potatoes, they're quite high. She does have lists throughout this book of what you can and can't eat easily. So I'm basically already doing, with part of the PKD system that I'm on, a low oxalate diet, although you do have to be careful suddenly stopping eating foods that have oxalates in, because your body can suddenly dump them all at once and then you form really quite nasty kidney stones. But anyway, I'd already started that diet plan before I had read this book, so I am eating a few things that still contain oxalates so that my body doesn't suddenly dump them all. We have evolved to eat some things, and our body is more than capable of clearing them out the system. Take raspberries, for instance. If you can imagine our hunter-gatherer ancestors, they would have come across them for 2 weeks a year, gorged themselves silly on raspberries, and then they wouldn't have had to have dealt with them again, or blackberries for that matter, till the following year. So your body's had all winter to clear the oxalates harmlessly out of the system. So we are more than adapted to deal with these things. It's just our modern day production of food, where everything's available all year round, is out of kilter. I mean, that is one of the amazing things about our bodies. We are adapted to eating. We can survive on pretty much anything. But if you eat the wrong type of plant, you are surviving at a price. And that's what this book covers. And the thing is, this is not often discussed. Now, they've known about this in the medical profession for, decades, if not hundreds of years. It was well documented, but then it seemed to slip out of publication and people didn't seem to mention it. But you just don't know, because it's a gradual build-up. You don't necessarily know, because the symptoms can be just so far-reaching and it can affect other things that you may have wrong with you, it's not the most obvious thing that you go to. So I'm keen to try it because of my migraines. I've been battling with those for the last 10 years. I never had them as a child. It came on in my 40s. So for me, I will try anything to get rid of those. So that's why I am ditching most of the vegetables in my vegetable plot. So here's just some of the many symptoms that show you may be battling with oxalate overload in your diet. And what is so concerning is it's all the foods they tell us are superfoods. Well, hence the title of the book, Toxic Superfood. Things like beetroot, almonds, blackcurrants, raspberries. And for those drinking a lot of things like almond milk, I mean, children have ended up on dialysis machines because they've been consuming just so much almond milk in their smoothies and whatnot. Almonds are high in oxalates, and oxalates can play a big part in arthritis, gout, fibromyalgia, excessive tooth tartar, jaw pain, gum disease, headaches, migraines, autism, poor sleep, oral sensitivity, Raynaud's, autoimmune disorders, fibrosis, hypersensitivities, mitochondrial dysfunction, systemic acidosis, liver function issues, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, hypothyroid, irritable bowel, gastric reflux, you name it. It can be oxalates. It can take years to get them out of the body. And although in some respects you want the body to do it slowly, but if you do have oxalate as an issue in your diet and you start to gradually reduce it, Sally says in her book that you do start to notice fairly soon an easing of your symptoms. So I think this book is an absolutely crucial read for anybody that is interested in optimizing their health. And especially if you're on a vegetarian or vegan diet, you need to know which are the highest and which are the lowest oxalate foods so that you can plan accordingly. And next year I will definitely be doing a low oxalate allotment, so all my vegetables will be the lowest as possible. There's some things that I really enjoy eating that I'm just going to grow regardless, but at least I'm not putting tons of oxalate dense food into my body. But the more I research the plants and vegetables, the more limited my choice of what I want to be putting in my body is actually coming down to. And a lot of it makes sense. A lot of it I have known for years. I know that any grain, any seed, the plant doesn't want you to eat that. That's its potential offspring. So they put lots of toxins in, but I always thought that just soaking the grains and disposing of the water sorted it out. And it really wasn't a big deal. But there's certain things like the oxalates that you cannot remove by soaking and by cooking. Other things you can certainly reduce tannins, you can certainly reduce some of the lectins, etc. But if plants really are putting a lot of stuff in that they don't want you to eat their potential offspring, except the exception of that is fruit. They do want you to take it and they do want you to go and disperse their seeds. So I will still be eating some fruits, especially the large pipped things like plums. But even those, you never want to be eating unripe fruit, because when they're unripe, that's when there is the most chemicals in there to protect the plant doesn't want you dispersing its seed until they're fully formed and ready to go. Also, we're told from health perspective that, all the vitamins and minerals are in the skin. It's really important that you eat the skin of things. But that's also where the most toxins are, because that is the first point that any invader trying to eat that seed or fruit goes into. So of course that's going to be where the majority of toxins are. So this is something I never ever thought I'd be questioning, because we've all had it drummed into us so much how healthy fruits and vegetables are. So it blows my mind that I'm even questioning it. Some of you may remember I started to back in March when I read an article on garlic and then subsequently onions, and I experimented with that, and I can't say I noticed a massive difference, not enough that made me think I'm never eating that stuff again, but the more I research into it, the more I'm viewing plants as medicine and occasional carbohydrates. So, but anyway, I'm gonna test it and see how I do, because we are all different, depending on your ancestry. Some people have adapted so much better to eating plants than others. Some people have bacteria in their guts that will destroy oxalates. People that have had a lot of antibiotics, that particular bacteria tends to be destroyed. There's a Dr. Adonis, I call him, on YouTube. His actual name is Dr. Anthony Chafee. He is an American doctor, neurosurgeon, who is practicing medicine in Australia. And he said the other day in an interview that when he went into the hospital, they said to him, if you get any Aboriginal patients, in your mind, add another 20 years onto their age because of what the Western diet has done to them. Because they haven't evolved with agriculture and they've gone from their hunter-gatherer, only eating vegetables and things to get by, but mostly hunting, when they've gone over to the standard American diet, it's been such a big leap. Their ancestry hasn't evolved with it, and they end up with such chronic illnesses because they haven't adapted. So, we can survive on absolutely anything, but it's the thriving and it's what it does to us. And that's what I'm in the process of doing a lot more research on. Because Dr. Chafee and others have shown the research that shows the cellulose, the fibre in vegetables actually has, or some vegetables actually has, a protease inhibitor, which means we're not actually able to digest the protein that we are consuming well. And also things like grains, like the breads, that there's anti-nutrients in it. And basically what that means is consuming those foods sucks some of the B vitamins out of your body in order to process that food, which is why most cereals are fortified with additional B vitamins because of this. Not to mention Little Miss Healthy here was insisting on eating whole grains because that's where the most vitamins are, and yes, that's where the most toxins are. So the more processed the food, actually, the easier it is on the body with chemical toxins from the plants. This has blown my mind, turned my entire world upside down, because, as many of you know, I was planning to buy some land and set up a regenerative agriculture experiment and try all these food forests and also fields of potatoes and all these things I was going to do and explore. And I'm now just completely like, ooh, okay, I don't actually know if I want to do that now. So I'm questioning everything. So my head is all like, ooh. But until I have given this a proper test run to see, do I do better on a more ancestral way of eating than I have with the carbs? And I want to research a lot more on plants. Obviously, I've learned a lot about oxalates, but I want to go into the lectins and the phytates and all the other stuff and look at if that's something I want to be consuming. And at the moment, with the research I've done, the answer's no, there's not many I actually want to be eating, despite all the vitamins and minerals that's in vegetables. And just because fruits and vegetables contain a lot of vitamins and minerals, it doesn't mean to say, one, they're that accessible to us, and two, there's quite a high price you pay for getting those vitamins and minerals. But yeah, until I've experimented with this diet for, well, probably years, but I'm going to give it a good 6 months before I start talking about it properly, because, just whenever you change your diet, you make improvements because you stopped eating all the foods that you were eating before. So your body's had a break. Doesn't mean to say the new diet is actually any good for you. So it takes a while to work out, is this doing me any good or not? And this is a challenging one for me, queen of carbohydrates, suddenly going cold turkey, which I don't recommend, and nobody recommends that. They recommend you gradually take out the carbs and go for a more fat and protein, healthy fats and protein diet. But that's just not my personality. If I'm going to try something, I'm all in. I'm going to do it 100% and right away. There's no point in peeling that plaster off slowly and painfully. Just rip it off and get right in. But yeah, there's been some adjustment, let's say. But anyway, I will talk about that another time if people are interested, and I'll let you know how I'm getting on in a few months' time. So far, I've done 30 days. There's been some very interesting but odd changes physically, mostly good changes. There's some things that are more challenging than others, but apparently they sort themselves out over time. It really mucks your electrolytes up for the transition period. I've never needed so much salt in my entire life. It just blows my mind. So it's a good job. I've also read this book recently, which is also another mind blower. These two books together, for anybody that has any interest in health whatsoever, this one is equally incredible. And yes, we do need a lot more salt than we think we do, and it's not nearly as damaging as we've been told. Surprise, surprise. So, probably not the video you're expecting from someone that's been promoting growing your own vegetables, like anything for the last 3 years. But, you know, I do have to be honest with you. This is where I'm at, and my enthusiasm for growing vegetables has tanked because I'm not eating them. Just as well I've had such a bad year on the allotment. But anyway, for those of you that are interested in the electroculture and JDAM experiment that I was doing, I haven't been on the allotment for a month because I've been away and I've been busy, and also it's like I just lost the enthusiasm for it. So I'll give you a guided tour of where we're at. Nothing's gone particularly well. There are some differences between the electroculture site, the JDAM and the control group. They're not hugely noticeable to say hands down which is best, although, as I say, if I'd done JDAM properly, I'm pretty certain that would have been the winner hands down. But there are some interesting things, so I'm still intrigued by that experiment. So I will definitely be doing one more year at the allotment. Whether I do a third year, it all depends on my diet. There's no point in growing vegetables if I'm not eating them. Okay, I'm donating a lot to the local community kitchen, because if you are eating that type of food, you might as well have the good organic stuff that I've been growing, because I'm not eating it. There is one good positive thing though has come out of this, something I'm really quite excited about, because now that I don't need the polythene tunnel for growing seedlings anymore, I've come up with a cunning plan for something I really, really want in the garden. And it's going to mean a bit of a redesign, and it's going to mean a completely different planting plan to the one I was going to do. But now I'm not planning to grow so many edible foods, I can do a few more ornamentals. So now the whole garden is going to completely change. It's going to need a completely different planting plan. So thank goodness I put off doing my planting plan. See, there's always a reason. I'm someone that has to go where the enthusiasm is, and I've had zero enthusiasm for doing that planting plan. But now I've got it. So in the next episode or two, maybe we'll do one episode with the redesign, and then the next one, the planting plan. So watch this space. I will finally finish designing my own garden. It's only taken me 18 months.